Why hello there, welcome back, and this is part 2 of my olive wood epoxy resin coffee table build. This episode I'm going to do the final few pours and the sanding, polishing and finishing of the table, so this will be the last episode. So here we are. It is the final pour. Before I pour though, I'm going to get the blowtorch and just get a shot of those bubbles. So I've got my bubble-free resin and ready for the final pour. It's the final pour. Sorry, I'll shut up. Please forgive my rather clumsy attempt at filming this, but it's not easy with one hand doing the pour, the other hand operating the camera. Some of the time these bubbles, especially in the cracks, you find that sometimes bubbles appear, you know, they take a while to worm there's one's just come up there actually. They take a while to worm their way out the wood, but then they come out, you know? So it is worth, especially on this sort of final pour, just checking every so often, coming back and checking. You see there's some here, they've just popped up. It's worth just making certain that no more bubbles have come up. Here's a good example. See, those bubbles weren't there a few seconds ago. So it's just going to get a shot of those. So I'm actually going to stay with the slab for about 20 minutes, I think, just to make sure that these bubbles aren't going to keep cropping up and spoiling the fun. See, there's another few bubbles that have just popped up, and that's why I'm staying with this for a little bit, just so that I'm sure bubbles aren't going to keep appearing where I don't want them. Hello, so we're about a week since the last pour now, and it is, absolutely rock hard. By a happy coincidence, I went on holiday last week, so there was no temptation at all for me to sort of come in here and, you know, check. There was no temptation to sort of demold it early or anything like that. Just being on holiday removed that danger completely. But now we're a week on, I'm confident that this will be absolutely rock hard, and that I'll be able to demold it and see what we actually have for the base slab. So I'm back inside now. As you can see, there is some shrinkage. It's much more obvious when the light falls on it. And the shrinkage seems to have occurred largely on the deep pores, you know, so sort of getting it around the edges in this main sort of crevasse along there. I don't think this should be too much of an issue because firstly I need to plane this all back to the wood anyway, and if that doesn't remove the shrinkage, then I can also top up areas with additional resin later on, so I don't think that should be too much of an issue. So the next job is to demould this. Right, there we have it. I mean, don't be alarmed. It was always my intention that the mould would not live to see the finished product, but I certainly did have to rip it apart to get everything out. But worthwhile, because here we are. And I'll tell you what, it really is clear. Look at that. The ripples on the back are from the tape, so that'll all go when I plane this down. But look at that. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so pleased with that. For a first attempt at resin, I'm chuffed to bits with that. Obviously there's learning. That was where there was one of the joins between the curvatures. Same up here. You know, there's facets and stuff that need repairing, and there's little issues here and there. There's bubbles trapped in a couple of places, which, you know, the inevitability of doing resin. These shouldn't matter too much because they are on the underside, but you can see them there, you know, but they will be nigh and invisible when the table's on its legs, because this will be the underside anyway. But I tell you what, I'm so happy with this. For a first go at resining, is that a word? For a first go at casting with resin, I'm chuffed a bit. Brilliant. So the next bit now is to plane this all away and get ourselves to the final shape. And then it's a matter of polishing and whacking the legs on. Happy days. So I've just started planing. I appreciate this is a number 4 plane. I know it's not really the correct plane I should be using for flattening such a large surface, but I don't have a different plane, so I'll make do with what we got. One thing that's really helped me is this table, which is actually gifted to me by a mate who's just moved to Canada, but it's got this really good stop on the end. It's what you call a planing stop. It means that I can push the workpiece right up against the edge and plane, and the workpiece is not going to go any further than there. So that's been a big help. There's a lot of work to do here, so I'm going to crack on. Once I had flattened the underside, I took the slab to a local wood shop to get the top side sanded professionally on a big machine. I chose to get the top side sanded at the local wood shop because I'd end up with a much better finish than I would by planing by hand. Wow, there we are. So it's a little bit humbling, to be honest. I probably spent about 2 hours, maybe a wee bit more, planing the underside of the wood. You know, sort of like continually like planing, resharpening the blade, planing again, measuring, resharpening, and then I got the top side done at a local wood shop on their proper industrial sander. And crikey, it took about, I don't know, 10 minutes with a fantastic finish. And it's not a great advert for using hand tools, I can assure you, but the result is just brilliant. I'm really happy with it. So next bit is to polish up the resin and smooth up the wood. Before sanding and polishing though, I had to do the sides of the table, and for this I used a router. Unfortunately though, I don't have any extraction in my house, so I had to do this process at a local wood shop, which did have extraction, because I didn't really want to have plastic shavings sprayed all over the garden. You know, it's not great for the environment, it's not great for anything. So unfortunately I don't have any clips of me doing this. This clip here is me practicing beforehand on a spare slab of wood that I had lying around the garden. areas on the sides I had imperfect finishes through things like where the curvatures were screwed into the moulds. So for these bits I used UV resin to sort of fill in the gaps. For a finish, I used boiled linseed oil. I really like this stuff. It gives the wood a really nice, rich colour, which, particularly when you're working with something like olive wood, is well worth doing because it's got an absolute multitude of colours in it, and it's worthwhile spending some time bringing those out. So I left that out for a wee bit and the oil dried nicely into the wood. One thing to be aware of with linseed oil is as it dries, the drying process is an exothermic reaction, meaning it generates heat. So be careful, because if you leave your rags unattended, if they overheat, they can actually set on fire. The exothermic reaction is that severe. So do be careful once you're finished with your rag, either wash it very thoroughly, or what I do is I just put them in a jar of water. Next thing to do was to work out where I wanted my legs to go. I was conscious that I didn't want any of the base plates of the legs to be over any of the epoxy, because I thought that would kind of ruin the effect of having clear epoxy in the wood. So I took quite a lot of time to position these legs in such a way that the table would be stable, but the legs are positioned over wood, not epoxy. I spent a long time just sort of tweaking these, looking at the table from different angles, seeing what looked the best before I marked up. I got these legs off Amazon and I'm really happy with them. They were pretty cheap, but they look really nice actually. I marked up the holes ready for drilling with, I scored some lines with a scorer and then also filled in the holes with pencil just to make sure I absolutely wouldn't miss. So I'm using threaded inserts on this table. They're M6 threaded inserts, and I just find that they give you a much nicer finish, and it means it's much easier to remove your legs later on if you need to reapply your finishing coat, or if, for example, you're moving house and it's easier to disassemble the table. finish, I used a wax-based product called Briwax, and this sort of ends up giving the wood almost like a sort of satin finish. Of course, it's important to sign your work at the end, and so that's what I'm doing now. And here is the final result. In the end, I'm really happy with this. It was a hell of a challenge. A big learning curve, having never worked with epoxy before, but I'm really pleased with it. It's a really eye-catching piece of furniture in my living room, you know. So that's it for this project. If you have any comments or anything, or any questions, leave them down below. If you've enjoyed the video, please give me a like and think about subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.